we have a super small range for the daily for tomorrow. We have 610.32 to the upside and 605.62 to the downside. Now this could mean sideways price action, or something is going to surprise people. And the 2 hours overall saying that we need to be pulling back. So this is where we're going to talk about the first trap. And I believe this would be the more probable one at this point. And this is how this overall move ends up going higher. So this would be, hey, we're going to see some kind of flush out as implied volatility is low and people aren't expecting anything. We might get this to flush out and set some kind of trap to the downside very early on in the week before we start to get data, before we start to get the FOMC, before we start to get even something like Apple earnings on the 31st on Friday. So we'll be paying attention to this downside move because this seems like the most probable thing at this point. So I just wanted to show that off because I think it's important for people to see that we had made the big run up with a plan that we fully executed very, very well up towards 611.03, and the risk that we really talked about over the weekend of going long after such a strong move, opening those new long positions here. Yeah, we said that's probably a bad decision because the main thing that we were pointing out was implied volatility was very low, and the most probable thing for this 2 hour move with the little 30-minute stuff going on up here is that you're going to pull back. So we are paying attention to these things. We are going to go further into the shorter time frames as the implied volatility for Tuesday has really picked up. We gotta be paying attention to some rip around moves and maybe even some more traps as volatility remains at higher levels. So let's get into it. The first thing I wanted to point out is tomorrow's a big day. Now, the reason that tomorrow is a big day is because tomorrow, if we close below the 9 and below the 20, we do have a chance to confirm this signal on the MACD. Now, that can be a blip and we can react up the other way, but we better see some great reversal signals if that is going to be a blip. So we're going to be talking about these signals that you are looking for now that the point that we're doing, right, the most probable case is kind of playing out here. So we want to see if that's going to prove itself throughout the week. And we just noticed that the 2 hour was in a positive trend, no reversal signals above it. So the probable thing was a mean pullback, especially with low implied volatility. I don't care what the news was. I care if people are going to make a decision to buy, if the selling is going to stop at some point and turn back up. We have not lost my 590 yet. We have not lost this low yet. So really, we need to be paying attention to tomorrow and find out what's going to happen here. Now, you're going to notice that these red lines have spread out. So the implied volatility going into Tuesday, holy crap, it went from 7% up here to 18% in here. So this is your 68% zone, 32% chance to land outside of that. And you do have 605.29 to the upside, and you have 593.45 to the downside. Now, this is a mean drop. So to say that this is just going to V-shape and start going to the upside, I would be worried if that happened. I would think you want to make good basing out signals here, which means what? That overall means that in this area, as we're down by the weekly expected move, everyone who took the course, you already know patience is the game here because we are looking for reversal signals in some way, right? This is the market getting really excited on a Monday, and by Friday close, we could end up down here, we could end up all the way up here, so we want to be paying attention. How would an overall base show its face here, right? How would that show up? Well, if you get some positivity, you go maybe test that 5 on its way down maybe, and you're able to test that, you curl up this MACD and it curls down one more time. Well, we want to see if that sets up a higher low or some kind of divergence. And if we start to see a higher low or divergence, and we are going to be live throughout the week to make sure we're paying attention to some of this stuff with you. And then we need to see how this looks before this yellow line comes up, because we're going to see if all of this structure is made before we get big FOMC, before we get big earnings, before all of these things, before people can fully read into the whole thing with DeepSeek or whatever it is. So like I said, for the most part, the plan that we were paying attention to, the most probable opportunity is overall showing its face, and that's what we're really treating this at this moment. This, to me, looks still like an opportunity. If it starts to get worse, this doesn't look like an opportunity to put money behind right now, but if it starts to get, give those basing out signals with a higher low or a divergence, then I'm happy with it, and I'm happy to risk some money. If it starts to make those basing out signals and then fail, I need to know that there are still risks that this can head lower. That is a mean gap. And the Qs going all the way down to this gap down here. So this is very important because the Qs are very deep on the MACD, which tells us one thing. The Qs were hurt the most by this overall move. And it tells us something else. The Qs most likely will need strong basing out to make this big move all the way back up. You know, if we had this type of look before a big news drop, before a big earnings and things like that, and I know there's earnings coming out all week, but the big days are going to be starting on Wednesday. So I think we're going to mess around until then, which makes sense when you take into consideration the implied volatility going into tomorrow. 32% implied volatility tomorrow for the Qs, which means we should expect some rip around kind of market. So to the upside, you have 522.86 to the upside and 505.56 to the downside. A big range, which means, does it mean that that has to just sky through the roof? No, it means big moves, which means if this is going to get some kind of relief here, maybe it is going to be a bounce that then fails and then is able to set up a divergence. Maybe that is going to be a bounce that creates some kind of higher low. So we're paying attention to that. The 2 hour here, you notice a little bit negative for the Qs. It's perfectly fine for that to be a little bit negative. Positivity can come from there, but we just don't want that to go extra deep down in here. So I think tomorrow you're really going to want to see what structure builds for you if this thing is going to be able to go up with some news possibly coming out on Wednesday. So we'll be paying attention to it. If you really want to think about this very, very simply, there's two things you need to be aware of. The 2 hour, look at the 2 hour, it's by the center line. If that's ever able to cross back up, then we would say that we could test this high and go make a new one. If the daily, though, is able to cross down and we see a good confirmation of that, that is going to be a big problem. So that is the overall bullish and bearish case. If we're taking that into consideration, it adds more credibility to this being a lower high if we see this MACD actually cross down and we see a solid confirmation, meaning a negative bar below the 9, a crossing of the MACD, and a crossing on the RSI. So tomorrow is going to be a very important day, and it totally makes sense why there is a bunch of implied volatility. So we'll be paying attention. Apple, something we were looking for, Apple was, is this going to be a higher low? Are we going to attempt to take back the 5-day moving average, right? And the 30-minute here is what we were looking for. Can that cross up, give us that chance? Hey, it crossed up. Then it actually took back the 5. And that's really what I was waiting for. And you see that positivity continue and we react to a very, very good level. I'm actually wondering here, as the 30-minute is pretty overbought, starting to come back out of those conditions, are we going to see some kind of pullback to retest into 226 to 225? That would be interesting. Or even fill this gap before it actually heads to the upside. That is just something I'm playing around with. As of right now, though, the 30-minute is in a pretty positive trend. So if that can pull back and turn back up, that would just mean the positivity is going to continue. How this could overall get worse to the downside would be if the 2 hour is able to cross. So something that you can look for is if the 2 hour starts to give you a closing bar below the 9, and then that takes you through the 5, it is very likely that you are going to go make a lower low at that point, and then we'll watch out for divergence before earnings. Now, earnings is coming up. I know that everyone asked me a ton of questions around earnings. There is something very key about earnings. If you're new here, if you've been here for a long time, I'm sorry to give you the spiel again. But earnings overall, to me, is a 50-50 flip. I don't know the data that they are going to give. I don't know the projections they are going to give. You don't know the data they're going to give. You don't know the projections they're going to give. You know, only people on the inside can know those things, right? So we don't have the ability to have that info. So something that I like to say all the time around these earnings is, if I see a play that I would like to take, I am making sure to manage my risk. That is something that I do for myself that is very, very helpful. If I manage risk, it doesn't always just have to be managing the actual trade. It doesn't have to be making some kind of stop loss. It can be management of risk with the position size, meaning if I normally, with a good setup, say I have a divergence or something like that, and I want to take that setup, if there's no earnings, well, I'm looking for my reasons and I can put a decent amount of money behind it. But if I do have earnings around the corner or earnings very close by, which you do for a stock like Apple, then you need to be considering downsizing the position size, because if you are wrong, there is a ton of implied volatility for these stocks that do have earnings this week. So if you're wrong, you can be wrong in a big way, and that money might not come back to you. So that's all I'm going to say for that. That's the overall earnings spiel. I like to downsize positions during that time if I am going to take a play and manage risk very, very closely. Tesla, the main thing I'm looking at is, can the 2-hour turn up? It is still within range of going positive, which I find interesting. The only thing freaking me out here is the possible little, 1-2 move. Like, can we actually break down further and end up down towards 357.78? So do I think Tesla is like the ultimate best thing? Well, not necessarily, but I think if I'm paying attention to this 2-hour and I see that thing curl up, I can manage the trade throughout in case something goes wrong, but that could be the next confirmation that we're going to see this high battled at this point. We look into the 30-minute chart, you're not seeing much. So if this wants to make a basing out signal first, I would really enjoy that. Some kind of upward move in the morning that actually fails, and then we see some kind of divergence at the lows. I think that would be fantastic for Tesla. Amazon, very, very interesting. Just wiping it out, getting rid of it all in one day, and then coming right back up. I think that's super interesting. Now, I do think, though, that Amazon might be a little bit difficult because you don't have that room on the MACD to really see a strong upside move. If Amazon actually gives this look of turning the 2-hour up and then crossing right back down, giving us some kind of divergence up here, that's going to be worrisome for me as it stands, because you do have some topping out signals up here, and that 2-hour would force them to possibly confirm. So I'm a little bit worried about that. I don't think Amazon will be the easiest thing to trade, so I'm not necessarily eager to get into calls again at this point. But this is some serious buying pressure. And I think you're seeing these big dips by Apple, Amazon, other stocks. I think you're seeing them get bought up because of the outflows of Nvidia, and they're like, where do I want to park my money? Well, Apple's cheap, Amazon's got a big dip for the day. So we'll be paying attention to it. But do I think this is like easy to look at? I think we need to give this, Amazon, I think you need to give it another day's time to really figure out what's going on here, because all that has to happen for this to get bearish a little bit again, right? End up pulling back even longer, is that 30-minute just rolls over in the morning. And then, if I go long here, it's like, it's just difficult with the structure of the market right now to say like, yeah, Amazon's a great probable move to the upside. Even though the 30-minute is suggesting that, right? It's a strong move from the buyers stepping in, take out this high, go make a new one. Something that just worries me is seeing some kind of flash move from the 2-hour, and then we end up dropping more than even this right here. So a little bit sketched out from Amazon. I don't think it is an easy setup, and that's why, once again, maybe from the beginning of this video, kind of remember, patience is going to be a good thing for the next day or so. Nvidia, I think you have to take it very seriously. I mean, this is a huge downward move below all the supports that you wanted to see, and you even gapped below 125, so that's really, really bad. But you are filling this gap, and this pricing might look pretty good, and if this is an overreaction, it can see a snapback. But there is a rule that I follow with my trading, and that's if a daily MACD does cross over, and especially if it's really close to the center line, I just don't even care what the stock looks like. I'm not looking at taking calls at any point. That's just one of my rules. It has saved me so many times. It's insane. Sure, it's gotten it wrong sometimes, but hey, I never risked money. So it's never really hurt me not taking a play when this daily MACD has its first cross down. We can notice that the first cross down happened here, and we ended up going up, but that doesn't matter because guess where we ended up later on, right? So this could be a lower high at this point from this move right here. So it is something you want to treat very seriously. This is outside of weekly expected moves by a long shot. So this is going to be a hard one for now. Now you're just hoping, hey, the buyers step in. So if you get some kind of basing out signals over the next few days, that would be great, because the 30-minute is super deep here. So I highly doubt we're just going to do that unless like the most amazing news comes out and the biggest buyer comes out and takes it. I think you're looking for the same things, right? You're looking for possibly a cup and handle with this area. You're looking for some kind of higher low. You're looking for some kind of divergence. And this is where, once again, it's just a good practice to be like, notice times where trade setups are there, and then notice times where you need to be a little bit patient. And this seems like one of those times. AMD, and I know someone was pointing out AMD during the chat today, and I actually said AMD does not look that bad. AMD does not look that bad. I mean, the last time we had divergence, you did see a nice pop, little dip down for the higher low as well. You got divergence with the higher low. That's great. And you ended up to the upside. That's great. So now we're looking for what? Can we get up to this area? Now, something you're doing here is creating a potential double bottom. If this 2-hour can confirm up, AMD actually could move in that upward direction. And it's kind of saying to you, hey, I could end up turning up this daily scale and stop it from turning down. And that's something you seriously need to happen for this thing to be able to buy up over time. Now, quick note here, earnings again. I know we're going to get annoyed with me saying this, but earnings is not for a little bit of time. So if I see a good play, and that good play is really really producing for me, especially if that's like all before earnings, something that I like to do is if I take a play and I see the upward move before earnings and then it's at higher levels, is I'm going to mitigate my risk. I'm going to get rid of some contracts. That way my exposure is still a smaller position size. You notice that is just risk management. It seems like risk management 101 to me. If there is earnings, I don't know what they are going to say in the earnings. I don't know the projections. So I don't want a ton of exposure into the unknown, right? I could be right, I could be wrong, red or black. It's just not a good recipe for success over the long period. You could be right once or twice, but trust me when I say some of my biggest losses have been trying to plan earnings. And so now I just stay completely away from it for the most part. Meta is interesting because super big upward move, and it is yet to get that 2-hour pullback. So something could be going on for Meta here where it needs to actually pull back before it makes the next move higher. We don't see reversal signals, so we're still going to be talking pullback for Meta. As of right now, the 30-minute is saying like, yeah, I can make that upward move, but this could just be a point of divergence. Now, if it wipes that out, hey, continues to turn up, we could just be continuing to squeeze for Meta. So I'd take that into consideration, but Meta is going to be one as well that is saying patience. And I know people hate when you say patience. They can't take a trade the next day. Learn patience and you will become a much, 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 much better trader. You had a good trade, right? Maybe you took volatility like some of us did. Maybe you took volatility like I did and you said, hey, that's a great profit. And you were like holding on to some runners. Hey, that's fantastic. But the key thing is you had a good trade, right? I had a good trade today. I sold completely out of the trade today on volatility just because I think that we are most likely going to make a base here, so I want to be ready to react to it. And the prop was just good, right? Weekly expected move. So really just learning patience will help me from taking one trade, then taking another trade the next day that completely ruins those profits. So you want to make sure you're seeing things very clearly on a big down day like today. You want to be seeing things clearly. For Meta, you might have some more time here for this to pull back to give you another opportunity. But if that 30-minute keeps curling up, it's just going to keep squeezing as far as I'm concerned. Microsoft, once again, we were talking about Microsoft outside of a weekly expected move last week. I mean, pretty big stuff. And we were talking about how this would overall want to head to the upside. And we were talking about this zone and how you like to break out of zones. A lot of the time when you break out of zones, you will see gaps above them, right? You'll see these gaps. Well, when you gap above them, sometimes you want to reach down into that zone to find some buyers and then see that launch forward. So we're going to pay attention if that's going to happen, right? This is still a 2-hour positive trend. If that can curl up, that's good stuff. Has earnings around the corner. Take that with a grain of salt. So you have to take almost everything with a grain of salt right now because earnings can totally flip everything on its head. The 30-minute is down in negative territory, so we still want to see, are we getting the basing out signals we need? Are we getting that higher low, or are we going to make some kind of divergence? And this is where I just pay attention to both, right? If that 30-minute continues in the upper direction, we're still below the 5, so sellers overall in control, even with the buying, and we'll see if that is able to turn down aggressively for some kind of double bottom, or we'll see if it's kind of a lackluster turn down and just curls right back up, and the MACD might take you like this, or the MACD might take you a little bit like this. And either way, we're just happy with it. So if you have more questions about these stocks, I know we just went through them kind of quickly and it's overall a patience kind of day. So there's not a ton to say about them. We're waiting for more price action. If you have more questions, just come to the live show in the morning and we're going to be talking about all this stuff for a couple of hours at the open. Now that AMC has crossed down on the 2-hour, what were we watching, right? We were seeing if we could make a higher low in the other one. We're seeing if this can be a strong base with a 2-hour divergence. And this is where, 2-hour divergence is known to curl up daily charts. So this is a signal I'm really watching, but I think it shows better on GME. If you need a level for AMC 379, you got to break through that to see something crazy. GME, I think this is one of the best little signals that we've seen in a while for GME, and I want to see if it's going to end up playing out. So what this means is GME could go down to something like $26 and then see some support come in. And if those buyers are really able to step in, you might see a 2-hour divergence here on your MACD and RSI at the same time. And this would be a great signal to see, right? This is the opposite signal of this. Okay, this is the exact opposite signal. The signal I'm talking about down here is the opposite of what just caused this big drop. So what does that mean? Well, if I see a signal like this, it means I can see positivity, right? And then I have to break through 29.89 to see something crazy, right? Because a squeeze is never the most probable thing. This is overall where the fight begins. If you can see a downward move and you see serious buying pressure and that ends up taking you through here, you want to see some strong closings. You do not want to look back if you want to see some kind of squeeze. But this is a serious 2-hour signal that I would be watching because 2-hour signals do reverse stocks around. If this does not confirm though, If it does not confirm on your MACD, it doesn't confirm on your RSI, and it doesn't confirm with the price action, we have to take it with a grain of salt. We can't be looking at that, right? Because if this is going to turn down and it just never sees the curl up, it never curls back up on the MACD, you can just end up keep going down into negative territory. And so this is where it goes, hey, it's kind of risky. We could be dropping lower, but if that reverses back around, it goes, that looks like opportunity. What exactly do I think is going on here? According to volatility, well, volatility popped pretty dramatically, so sold those calls pretty quick. We noticed a little double top on a 5-minute, and that's what caused the 30-minute to curl down. So that caused us to overall go sideways in the market or see some kind of little uptick. So this could continue, right? We could continue, we could keep going down, but there are some suggestions, right? The 30-minute is by the center line, so if that curls up, it would suggest that volatility is going to be higher. We'll see if that includes some selling for the overall SPY. But we want to pay attention to a couple of things here because volatility is really good at giving some hints. It left behind a gap, and if we make any kind of reversal signal here, meaning we do see a higher high that creates a divergence or a lower high while maybe the SPY makes a new low and gives us that divergence, that would be something to pay attention to for volatility. As of right now, the way that volatility is going to subside even faster is if the 2-hour can cross down, right? If the 2-hour can cross down, you start to cross back below that 5, it's starting to say, okay, we might be squeezing. Most likely we will run into, even if this 2-hour does cross down, most likely you will run into a bump in the road to create some kind of higher low in the SPY, some kind of lower high for volatility. So just be aware of that. So the main takeaway for this video, I mean, overall, we are looking for those basic out signals for the 30-minute. And I encourage you to join us for the live show because we've been talking about that all day and really trying to calm people's nerves. Like this was all kind of expected, at least, you know, by us generally. This was the most probable thing to happen, actually, if you've been paying attention to this channel for the last couple of weeks. So this is something that can scare a lot of people out, but you have to just take this very seriously and understand I am still in a positive trend for the 2-hour. I have not crossed over the daily MACD, and I don't even have a good confirmation of downside with the price action at this point. So we could be seeing more funny behavior tomorrow, and then we'll see what happens once we actually get some data starting on Wednesday and some big earnings. So we'll be paying attention. We're staying calm, and patience is your best friend. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to trade like water, right? When times are volatile, it means you can make good money. Like I'm really enjoying all of the volatility that we are getting, but notice how quickly I am moving. I am like, okay, that's the move. Hold on to it for a couple of days. I'm out, right? So you have to be moving quickly. You have to be trading like water, and trading like water means I'm managing risk, I'm managing position size, and I'm watching my trades very closely in case something is going wrong, right? I want to pay attention to how I can get screwed. Okay, so the key thing is if you're having trouble with this market, if this market is really scaring you at this point and you want a little more knowledge in order to like understand what's going on and how the things we are looking at around these weekly expected moves, that course is down there in the description, guys. It goes away in like 4 days, so you got to get it while it lasts. You can get it for $100. It's going up to $400 after this weekend. So it's a time where, hey, if you get that course on the sale, that's great. The $100 course is coming back, but not till 2026. So you have to be on your toes here and look and see if it's good for you. You can come to the live show and ask me questions. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys for subscribing. You guys have been fantastic. And I hope everyone's happy with us, the most probable move playing out right now. And now we just have to be patient, see if it's basing out to see if we can go to new all-time highs again. Thank you for watching. Peace out.